What do we know at this point about what it is exactly that the US has paused?
Well, we knew just 24 hours ago that military aid had been paused, but we got an indication from Ukrainian source that intelligence sharing, which is utterly vital for Ukraine to often target Russian positions, know what the Russians are doing, that appeared to be continuing. But CIA Director John Ratickliff telling Fox Business this morning that this was something that also had been paused along with the military aid. Now, he described this more as something that had led to the sense of rapprochement we got last night when President Trump spoke at length about a letter that he'd received from President Volodymyr Zelensky. That letter, he said, showed that they were willing to sign the rare earth minerals deal at a time that was convenient for the White House, that they were committed to peace. And earlier in the day, Zelensky had described, both on video and in a social media posting, that he felt that the Oval Office scene, which many here in Ukraine felt was essentially him being ganged up on by two of the most powerful men in the world, that he felt that was regrettable. Zelensky did. So a real effort by Kiev here, despite, I think, how many Ukrainians have interpreted those White House scenes to try and bridge the gap. Yet, it does appear that that hasn't radically changed matters as yet, as Ratickliff is essentially suggesting that he thinks the pause in intelligence sharing and military aid will be lifted as we see the Ukrainians move closer back towards the peace process. I should point out the Ukrainians have never been against the peace process. It's the kind of peace process that they're being asked to sign up to, that they and their European allies are wary of. I should also add that Trump's national security advisor, Mike Waltz, has also said in the last hours that he thinks they can nail down these if we can nail down these negotiations and move these negotiations forward and put some confidence building measures back on the table, then the president will take a hard look at lifting this pause. So a suggestion too that Ukraine hasn't made enough steps yet, that they want to see them make more, to see more engaged in a peace process for this to be lifted. I should bear in mind between 20% to 40% of Ukraine's aid comes from the United States, depending on how you're counting it. And it's the vital stuff that no one else can really replace. It's the Patriot air defense missiles. It's the intelligence that we were talking about. So it is crippling to have this taken away. And we've talked to Ukrainian officials who talk about a critical ammunition artillery shortage by May at the latest. Patriots could run out in a matter of weeks. So people will die as a result of this pause if it continues too much longer. What is not clear, I think, for those around President Zelensky is exactly the kind of peace that they are being asked to commit to. Is this a general feeling amongst President Trump and his advisors that Zelensky is willing to commit to peace? That's not something he's ever rejected. It's just a form that they are concerned about. Is it him signing up to a European process, which appears to be underway? Indeed, Zelensky suggested some sort of ideas around that, a prisoner swap, a partial ceasefire in air, sea and against energy infrastructure targets. Or is it the peace process that's happening on a separate track between Moscow and Washington, in which both Europe and the Ukrainians are not involved? That's not clear, and I think that leads to a sense of unease here in Kiev as to exactly what the pressure is for, where it's trying to get Kiev to agree to, and I think that is something we need to probably hear more from the White House going forwards. But the fact that this kind of worst possible option of halting intelligence sharing, that's really something that is deeply crippling potentially to the Ukrainians. The fact that that has been done since the Oval Office shows the extent of the leverage the White House is using here, and probably the extent of the work that needs to be done to heal that relationship. It sounded like it was back on track last night, but clearly the messaging from the White House is they feel Kiev needs to do more.
I want to ask for your view on what the Ukrainian president said after that Oval Office meeting. He repeatedly went online. He thanked the U.S. and President Trump for the help that the U.S. is giving, saying it is crucial to have the president's support, that no one wants peace more than we do. Is that enough for President Trump to get things back on track?
Well, the president took calls from Prime Minister Starmer. Yesterday, he's also taken a call from Prime Minister Meloni of Italy. President Zelensky is with those European leaders now. Those European leaders are talking to him directly about getting to the negotiation table. What does he need to see to actually negotiate with us and negotiate with the Russians, go to confidence building measures, go to a ceasefire, and bring this horrific war to an end? And what was so, I think, stunning to all of us in the Oval Office was that it was not clear Zelensky was going to go to negotiations at all, that he would ever be able to negotiate with Putin, and whether he shared our goal of ending this war. So what I made clear as Secretary Rubio, and I said, look, this cannot proceed, was that this was a huge missed opportunity for him and for his country. He could have left the White House on Friday on the heels of an engagement with President Macron of France, with Prime Minister Starmer of the United Kingdom, where they were talking about European boots on the ground, security guarantees for Ukraine, a positive movement towards ending this war, and having Ukraine and the United States being bound together for a generation economically. But what we made clear was that could not proceed, at least for now. And President Trump said in his announcement on X, when President Zelensky is ready to truly engage for peace, he's welcome back anytime.
So what does the president need? What does President Trump need? Does he need a public apology? Does he want a phone call? Can you be specific on how to make that happen?
Well, it wasn't clear to us that President Zelensky was ready to negotiate in good faith towards an end to this war. For us, talking about the details and demands of security guarantees before, as President Trump said, look, I don't know that we can get both sides to the table at this point. And, you can't kind of trash the other side litigating through the history of this conflict if we're going to bring both sides to the table. And further, coming to the Oval Office, with the body language, the shaking of head, the arms crossed, we found it incredibly disrespectful. We were ready to sign that deal. I want to address directly that this was some type of ambush is absolutely false. We had negotiated the minerals deal in the weeks prior. It was difficult, but it was done and finalized and ready to be signed in the East Room.
You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people.
But just to give you a sense of how much things broke down, look at this picture of the Ukrainian ambassador to the United States. She has been the ambassador to the U.S., I should note, since 2021, since before Russia invaded Ukraine. She had her head in her hands at one point when I looked around the room and was just looking at all of the officials here. Secretary of State Rubio, Treasury Secretary Bessent, the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, the Commerce Secretary, they were all in the room, and the Ukrainian officials as well, watching this play out and raising real questions about what the two leaders here are going to be able to get done behind the scenes. This is the photo of the Ukrainian ambassador to the United States as they were just shouting at one another between the three of them in an incredibly remarkable moment.